Hey everyone, welcome to day 9 of the Advent of Cyber on TryHackMe. And before we start, please remember to click that subscribe button if you enjoyed this walkthrough. And now let's just go onto the computer and see what today's task is all about. Alright, it looks like we'll be talking about passwords today, and we'll also be learning how to crack them, which is pretty interesting. But for now, let's start by diving deep into the storyline for today, shall we? So with time between Easter and Christmas being destabilized, the once quiet systems of the best festival company began showing traces of encrypted data buried deep within their servers. Sir Garrett Payne stumbled upon a series of locked PDF and zip files labeled North Pole Asset List. Rumors spread that these could contain fragments of Santa's master gift registry, critical information that could help malware control the festive balance between both worlds. Sir Garrett Payne sets out to crack the encryption, learning how weak passwords can expose even the most guarded secrets. Can the elves adapt fast and prevent their secrets from being discovered? I really hope they can. And today in our task, we are going to be learning how password-based encryption protect files such as PDFs and zip archives, why weak passwords make encrypted files vulnerable even though they are encrypted. So yeah, they should be secure, but not really. We will also be talking about how attackers use dictionary and brute force attacks to recover passwords. And then we have an hands-on exercise on how to crack passwords. And we will also touch on the importance of using strong, complex passwords to defend against these attacks. And already here, we can see that the strength of protection depends almost entirely on the password. Because short and common passwords can be guessed, but long and random passwords are far more difficult to break and guess. Different files use different algorithms and key derivation methods. What this means is that a PDF, the way encryption works within PDF files will not be the same way it would work on a zip file, right? And then many consumer tools still support legacy or weak modes, particularly on the zip encryption, which we will test in our practical challenges for today. And encryption protects data confidentiality only. It does not prevent someone with access to the encrypted file from trying to guess the password. Alright, cool. Now let us go and set up our lab for today. What we need to do today is just to click on this green button right here on my right side, and then you will see that a machine will be initializing on the right side of the screen. Now I'm a full screen guy, so let's click on this button here at the bottom of the screen that says view in full screen. A new tab will be open, and now the machine is loading, and we can go back and click on the minus sign to exit split screen. So now we can see everything with a lot more detail, and we can go back to the lab machine once that is loaded to do the practical exercises. Now if you're using a VPN connection to connect to TryHackMe's resources and assets, you can use this set of credentials to connect to this virtual machine using RDP or SSH. But if you're following my steps and you're using the built-in virtual machine, you don't need to worry about any of that. All right, cool. So let's click check on this one because everything is ready to go. And while we wait for our virtual machine to load, let's talk about how attackers recover weak passwords. All right, so there's a couple attacks that we will discuss today, and I can explain you what those attacks are all about. The first one that we have is dictionary attack. So this one is pretty simple. You can get a text file with a lot of different words in there, so we would call it a word list, and we could have password 123, password 123456, and so on and so on. And then we would test every single one of those passwords against the file that we're trying to crack. And then if one of those passwords is the correct one, we'll then be able to crack it. So this one is very, very simple to understand. Then for mask attacks and also brute force attacks, those take things a little bit further, and those make things a little bit more complex. So for the mask attack first, these are the ones where you set a specific pattern for the passwords that you're trying to test. So for example, you would create a pattern like, I want to test a list of passwords that has 3 lowercase characters and then 3 uppercase characters, and then I want 3 digits or 3 numbers followed by an exclamation mark. And you will try to run every single combination within that specific pattern. Now, a brute force attack is where you will try every single possible combination of characters within a chosen length, which could be a 12-character long password and a specific character set. So you could include lowercase, uppercase, numbers, and special characters, for example. And yeah, that would take a long time depending on how long the password would be. That's why you always hear about making your passwords longer and thinking about passphrases instead of passwords that are more easy to guess and break. So yeah, that's basically what you need to know in terms of what sort of attacks are attackers using to try to break passwords. Now, there's some practical tips in here that might be useful as well. So we should start with the word list, which is the dictionary attack. You have a list of words that you can just use, and then you will try one by one and see if you find the correct match. And then if that fails, you can start to have more targeted word lists. So you can have company names in there, project names, or data from the target. So trying to make it a little bit more personalized for your use case. And then if that fails, you can try to mask the attack or use incremental attacks on short passwords. So for example, here, remember the mask attacks. So what I said was you could basically define a specific pattern, which is exactly what we have here. We have lowercase, 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 and then digit and digit. Exactly. 3 lowercase letters followed by 2 digits. And we would basically try every single combination of passwords within that specific pattern that we define. So yeah, and then if performance is an issue, we can try and use GPU accelerated cracking when possible. This dramatically speeds up the attacks for some algorithms. Now, for the defenders, here's something you should keep an eye on. Cracking is CPU and GPU intensive. So if you see a machine or a resource within your environment that has CPU and GPU resources being used to the max for a long period of time, that might be an indicator that a brute force attack is occurring at that moment. So yeah, let's go into the practical part of today's task. So I know you guys are excited and I am excited as well. So let's just get started. You will find the files for this section in the desktop directory of your machine. So let me check for that first. All right, so we have our desktop in here and we can see some files here on the left. Now this background makes things a little bit harder to see. So let me change the background real quick. So right click, change desktop background, scroll all the way to the bottom and choose this one from TryHackMe. Perfect. And now we can see our files here on the left side of the screen. Perfect. All right. Use the file command or open the file with X viewer. This helps pick the right tool. Okay. If it is a PDF, proceed with PDF tools. If it is a zip, proceed with zip tools. Now, this is interesting, right? You can see we're using this tool called file and then specifying the file that we want to analyze. Now, it's interesting because the files already have the right icons. So this is a PDF clearly, and we can also see the extension. So it's flag.pdf. Same here for the zip file. We can see the icon is the same icon we also see on zip files in Linux, and also the extension, it says flag.zip. Now, these things are some things that attackers can also change. You might see a file that says picture.png, but that png is just part of the name file. It's not really the extension. So this is still useful. So let me just click on this terminal icon right here. The terminal will just pop up. The first thing that we are going to type is cd to change directory, and let's navigate to our desktop. So change directory to desktop. Cool. Let me click enter a couple times. And now what we will do is use this file tool and then specify our files that we have on the desktop. By the way, if you just want to list all the files and see what you have in this specific folder, just use the command ls and you will see we have our files right here. Flag.pdf, flag.zip, and also a folder called John right there below in our desktop. All right. So now what we need to do is use the file command and select the file that we want to analyze. So I'm going to go for the flag.pdf if I can type. There we go. And yes, we can see it's a PDF document with this specific version and it has only one page. Cool. Let's do the same for the file.zip. So file flag.zip. And yes, this is a zip file, and yeah, with this version, and yeah, there we go. You can see the encryption method as well. So yeah, I think we're good to go. All right, what we will do now, just type clear, and we can go back to our main task and see what we have next. All right, so now we have to choose which tools are we going to use. And the first attack that we are going to execute is a dictionary attack. It's fast and often successful. Example, PDF with PDF crack and rocku.txt. What is this rocku.txt? You can see it here on the example. We are running the tool called PDF crack. We are specifying the flag.pdf file with this flag.here -f. And then we are using the flag -w to specify the word list that we are going to use, which in this case is rocku.txt. Let me show you what this looks like. So if I just go back to my terminal and I type cat. Cat is basically a Linux tool that allows you to read the files here on the terminal. And then I go straight to where rocku is. So there we go, rocku.txt, and I just press enter. You will see we have a lot of different words and passwords that we are going to go through in order to crack these files, right? I'm just going to press Ctrl+C to stop that. We don't need to see anymore. Just see that we have a lot of different words here, which we are going to use in order to crack our files. Now, why do we even need to crack these files? Well, that is because if you try to open the PDF, you can't, because it asks for a password, right? And if you try to open the flag.zip file, well, it allows you to see what's inside the zip file. But if you want to have access to this flag.txt, let me drag and drop it to the desktop. You can't. You need to provide a password as well. So we need to do something in order to get the passwords for both files in order to crack them and get the information that we need. So how are we going to do that? Well, first we are going to crack the PDF file with this command right here. We are going to use the PDF crack for our flag.pdf and run it with our rocku.txt word list. So let's just do that. So type in PDF crack followed by -f and then the name of the file, which is flag.pdf, and then -w to specify the word list, and then just type the file path of the word list that we are going to use, which in this case is inside this word lists folder that is inside the share folder, which is inside our user folder. And then just type in rocku.txt. I'm just going to adjust the size so we can have it all in one line. Perfect. And now just press enter. Boom. There we go. I mean, we got a password. We got it right here. Now, how in the world did we get that password and what's happening under the hood here? We could go into a lot of detail in order to try to understand how this happened, but I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. So basically, this tool, the PDF crack tool, went through the entire flag.pdf file in order to understand how is this file protecting himself, trying to get information about the encryption method that this PDF file is using, how long the key is for that encryption, and then it goes through our word list one by one, and then for each word, it turns that word into a possible legit encryption key, and then trying to use that key to decrypt a specific value that is inside of the PDF file. And then if that matches and if that is successful, you get the password or whatever encrypted information is inside of that file. Now, that was a lot of yapping and probably a lot to digest, but that's basically what's happening under the hood here. All right, so we have our password. I'm just going to copy it, okay, and try to see if we have access to the PDF file. So I'm just going to paste it right here, unlock document, and there we go. I think this is probably the answer to our first question, right? So I'll just going to copy this, going back to the TryHackMe page and scroll all the way down. Let me paste this right here. Check. And there we go. We got the answer to our first question. So let's take this opportunity to read the second question. What is the flag inside the encrypted zip file? Now, in order to do this, let's go and scroll back up to see how this is done, because we have an example right here. So we did the second step. We chose a tool to crack our PDF, and the third step was to conduct a dictionary attack, which we did, and we were able to get the password. We cracked the PDF, and that's done. Now, what about the zip file? Remember the zip file? That's what the second question is all about. It's this zip file here on the left side. By the way, let me go back to my terminal and type clear, so that everything is more readable for you when we do the second task. Okay, so for the zip file, let's see how this works. Now, this is a two-stage attack, all right? Because we are going to use this tool called John, but John cannot crack zip files. We will have to take that zip file and transform it into something that John can actually go and crack. And for that, we are going to use this tool called zip to John. So zip to John is going to take that flag.zip file and transform it into something that John can read. And what that means is that this zip hash.txt file will then grab all of the important encrypted pieces that reside on the zip file, which John cannot really get to. But with this new, John will be able to go through it and crack it, hopefully. And you can see the example on the command right here. We will use John, and then we'll specify a word list and use the same exact word list we used on the previous example. So it's the rocku.txt, and then we specify the file that we created on the previous step. So let's go back to our virtual machine and type in zip to John. All right. And then we specify the name of the zip file, which is flag.zip. And then we use the greater than symbol to transform it into the new file, which we can call zip hash.txt, just to make it the same as we have here on the example, right? So yeah, this should work. So let me just click enter. Boom, there we go. Do we have a new file? Let's see in our desktop. Exactly, it's right here. Let me pull it back here. All right, let me put the terminal where it was. So we can see a new file was created, zip hash.txt. If you want to see it in the command line, again, use the command ls to list the files, and you can see it. It's right there as well. All right, let's clear this and use the big command now with our second tool for this type of attack, John. And then we specify the word list by typing -- word list equals, and then the same file path that we use for the rocku word list. So user share, then word lists, and then rocku.txt. And then we specify the file. Let me just make this bigger so you guys can see it. And then we specify the file that we just created. So zip hash.txt. Press enter and let's see if it works. And it did work. Perfect. So you can see we got a password right here. So let's see if it worked. Let me try and copy this password that we got, winter forever. Try to open the flag.zip file that is here on your desktop on the left side. Let me minimize this and try to drag and drop the flag.txt into your desktop. It will ask for the password, so just paste it there. There we go. And it worked. Extraction completed successfully. So now we can open the file just right here on the desktop. Just double click it and we will probably get a flag. There we go. That's it. Let me just copy it and paste it on our task for today. So let me go back and paste it right here. Boom. There we go. Now, there is something we haven't really touched on, which is how do we detect these sort of attacks? And for you defenders, there is a section at the end of today's task, right after our practical exercises. So we just got done with this part where we cracked the zip file, but then there is a section about detection with indicators and telemetry for these sort of attacks. So something that could be very, very useful for you defenders is to build custom detections so that you get an alert or an incident is created whenever something like this happens. And the best way to do that is to understand how can I detect that an attack like this might happen. Well, the first thing that you can try to detect is, are any of these tools being used within my environment? Because if someone is running John or Hashcat or PDF crack, they're probably trying to crack a file or to crack a password, right? And then if someone is also running some very suspicious commands, like specifying word lists like rocku or seclist, which is a very well-known word list repository, that would be very suspicious as well. And then another thing would be, like we mentioned earlier today, GPU and resource artifacts. If you detect high and steady GPU utilization, this could also be an indicator that something fishy is happening there. And then there are also network hints that if someone is downloading word lists like the rocku.txt, that is suspicious. Or if someone is trying to clone a GitHub repository that has a bunch of word lists, that would also be considered very suspicious. And if someone is just downloading and installing password cracking tools, I mean, that should be detected right away, right? A normal user should not be installing tools like that. So yeah, last but not least, we have some examples of custom detections you can create. Here we have one for sysmon logs within Windows. You can see the execution of john.exe, hashcat.exe, or zip to John. You can see the same tool that we used today. Then the same thing for Linux. You can see detections for when someone is using the rocku.txt word list. Same with John and hashcat. And yeah, that would be a lot of examples. So if you want to learn more about all of these, we can go a lot deeper into this topic in specific. And if you'd like to do that, well, make sure you check out the password attacks room so that you can go deeper into this topic and have a lot more fun. Oh, and I almost forgot to click check on the last task. So yeah, now we are done for today. That was a lot of fun. And that was it for today. I really hope you enjoyed today's walkthrough. If you did, please remember to hit that subscribe button, leave a comment below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!